we are recording. Welcome everyone to the Mandatory Women Are Sexual Objects podcast. My name is Ken Davis. With me is...
Tim Trent.
Ooh, you actually did your full name this time.
I'm going to stop being stupid.
Okay.
I'm going to attempt to.
I mean, that's impossible.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I was just about to add that in. So at least I have a little bit of humility.
You know, it's not funny if you preempt my insults. It's only funny if you don't actually like them when they happen.
Well, okay, but I agree. So,
Oh,
in a sort of way, it has gotten funny.
You do realize that I now have that recorded forever. You can't take it back. I'm just going to replay this forever.
Okay, I mean, that's fine, but I also think that pretty much all of us are stupid.
I'm not stupid.
Realistically.
Nope.
I mean, you know, you and I think, are probably a bit above average, but still relatively stupid.
If you change the phrase a bit to significantly, then I agree with half of your statement.
No.
Whatever. Today we were talking about The Forbidden Planet, which is a movie directed in 1956 by a man named Fred Wilcox, maybe a famous director, I don't know. We usually like to start these off talking about our previous experiences with whatever we're talking about, but that's going to be really short in my case, and I suspect in your case, because at least for me, I know that I have absolutely no previous experience with this movie. I'd never heard of it. I'd never seen anything from it. Maybe I'd seen vague pictures of that robot. What was the robot's name? Freddy? Robbie. Yeah. I feel as though maybe I've seen images of him before, but I don't even have concrete feelings about that. So basically, I've had no experience with this movie. I know you were the one, at the very least, who suggested that we do this. So if nothing else, I guess you can maybe talk about why that was.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you talk about, you know, having experience with the movie, the whole reason why I picked this movie or why I was interested in it is because it was, as far as, you know, the people I'd known who had told me about it, it was, and as far as I'd read about it, it was kind of like the precursor to the modern, you know, sci-fi movie. It was the first movie where humans are, you know, depicted in traveling in a spaceship of their own creation, as taken from Wikipedia. It was the first movie that basically perpetrated the idea that's now prevalent in every science fiction movie. Well, not every, but many of the spacefaring sort of science fiction movies. It was the first movie in which a robot had a major sort of part to play in the movie as like a character, as opposed to, I think they put it as like a walking, you know, garbage can or something like that. It went from being something that was basically useless to a main character. And I thought that it would just be interesting, you know, to sort of look back in time and see, okay, well, this is basically the granddaddy of, you know, Star Trek and Star Wars and all that other stuff. So, yeah, that's where I'm coming from, I guess. That's not really previous experience, but it's kind of like the perspective, I guess you could say.
I gotcha. I also read that the robot, Robbie, was like the first robot to be like a main character after I watched the movie. I read that. But I disagree. In fact, I'd go as far as to say all the characters other than the semi-villain dude and whatever the captain's name was, they were all inconsequential. Only those two characters mattered. In fact, you could have gotten rid of all of the other characters and the movie would have been almost identical. But I guess we'll get into that a bit later. I'll also note that, have you seen any of, like, the original Star Trek?
No, I haven't.
From what very little I've seen, and I've seen most of Star Trek The Next Generation, very good show, but of the original, I haven't seen much, but from what I recall, they were pretty much all identical to this movie. The plots of every episode are pretty much more or less the same as the plot of this episode. The formula is the same. They go to a planet to check out something. They beam down. Something goes wrong. There's a hot woman who wants to hook up with the captain for no explained reason, because women are sexual objects and these types of things. They hook up, and then he saves the day somehow, and then they leave, having learned a little bit more about the universe and themselves, allegedly. So this movie came out in the mid-50s. Star Trek came out in the early 60s. Gene Roddenberry said that this was an influence on him, and I can easily see that. In fact, I could go as far as to say that he maybe even directly stole everything from this movie, from the Federation in Star Trek being just a military organization on a ship, exactly like the people in this movie were, to the formula like I just described. It's pretty much a carbon copy, which is really interesting to see. And that's probably about the most interesting historical thing I can say about this movie from personal experience. So I guess we can just get into the story. So the story, as it were, is this thing starts off in the year 2300, or in the 23rd century. I think those are different
Yeah.
things. Yeah. So humans have figured out a way to travel faster than the speed of light. In the very beginning, the announcer, narrator dude anticipates that people are going to be on the moon in the 21st century. That actually happened just over 10 years after this movie came out. So that's just a fun little failed attempt to predict the future. But in this case, things were a lot better than they anticipated. Seeing all of the like technology they expected to have on the spaceship was kind of fun. They had like that way of calibrating where the spaceship was going, but it was actually like a physical spaceship they were using to calibrate with all the things moving around it instead of like a computer screen. And then at one point he looks at the sun or the star that they were next to through like an actual telescope, as like the kind you would use in a submarine instead of like using a computer screen again. But this ship is being piloted by like this captain and these young men, and they're going to be a relief team for some people on this planet that's light years away. So they get to the planet, and this guy on the planet messages them. He's like, "Go away, it's dangerous down here." And the captain is an irresponsible idiot. He's like, he doesn't ask what the problem is, first off. He hears that the guy is really concerned and is telling them to leave, but he's like, I don't like being told what to do. No, I'm landing immediately. And the guy's like, no, please don't land. And he cuts him off.
He cuts him off. It's ridiculous. What a responsible captain.
What person would do that? Stuff like that takes me out of these movies.
Well, that captain, I mean, he just seemed like an asshole anyway, though. Like, through the entire movie, he's yelling at people. He doesn't seem very likable. And he seems irresponsible, so...
Yeah, and I mean, I would expect that from a military captain character, fair enough, but have him be, like, reasonable in it. To compare to Star Trek, like Jean-Luc Picard and, what's the dude in the original Star Trek? I'm so embarrassed I can't remember this. William Shatner, but that's not his name. Oh my gosh.
What are you talking about?
The captain in the original Star Trek.
I don't know.
Are you kidding me?
What? Haven't watched Star Trek. Which, you know, I've never seen anything pop culture.
You haven't?
So, you know.
What's his name? Picard and...
His name is Strudel.
I'm looking this up.
Strudel McHumpherdink.
Kirk. Captain Kirk. James T. Kirk. Okay, first off.
Oh, yeah.
You did see the remakes of the movie, which had the same character, so I don't want to hear it from you. You have some level of intimacy with this franchise, and you did know his name.
Some level. No, well, I mean, okay, but I thought, you know, it might have been different from the movie.
You didn't even try to answer my question.
Okay, but, you know, the fact that you were puzzling over it made me think, okay, well, it's not Kirk, because obviously he was...
I said the first one. What? Oh, my... whatever.
Kendall.
Okay, so this, unlike Kirk, this captain is not an asshole. So they land on the planet irresponsibly. Then this robot, who's apparently a famous robot, as we mentioned earlier, he comes to greet them, and he takes 3 of them to the house of the one surviving dude on the planet. And the surviving dude, who looks just like Liam Neeson, in my opinion, he explains that everyone else in the expedition died except for him and his wife, and subsequently his daughter, but... his wife died later due to unrelated causes, but everyone else was killed by this mysterious force, which is kind of like a monster, but for some reason his family was immune, and the captain is suspicious of this, as he should be. And then his daughter comes out, and she looks fine as hell, and I don't remember who she was played by, but that's fine, because we wouldn't know anything about her anyway. And it's not just my opinion that she looks fine as hell, because immediately... all the guys start drooling over her.
Anne Francis. That was the actor.
Oh, Anne Francis? Okay.
Yeah, she was pretty.
She was. And she was wearing very, very appealing clothing. So all the guys start drooling over her, and they just straight up ask the dad, hey, can we have sex with her? They don't phrase it like that, but they pretty much do.
We hope you'll give us some allowances. We've been traveling in space, and we only have men on our ship.
Oh, but that's like the direct quote. That's what they say when they see her.
Will you give us some allowances with your daughter? And then he's just like, maybe I should give you some allowances.
He does. He totally says that.
It's like, wow. And maybe he's just like impressed by them. Maybe he's just like, wow, these guys have balls.
That's a bold move. And I guess she's impressed by them, too, because she does not have a problem making out with all of them. Does not take much for her. So...
well, she has been isolated.
That's true.
What is this man?
I was wondering if she's isolated and doesn't really know much about people at all. Why is she so pretty? Like, why is she shaving? Why is she wearing these clothes? Why does she have her hair done
Well,
up?
I mean, maybe, I guess she would get some of that from her father. Obviously, we wouldn't assume that he would have any sort of weird relationship with her, but that's just like a social norm.
I don't know. There was that one scene where I think they're walking away from the house for the first time, and he like kind of puts his hand around her waist, and it was kind of awkward. Like at first, when I first saw that, I thought they have some weird relationship going on, but they never bring it up later.
I don't know. I didn't even notice that, so I guess it didn't really matter to me.
No, it clearly wasn't intentional based on the way the movie played out. But the first time I saw it, I was like, is that how they're going with this? So after they meet the daughter and they meet the dude
Morbius.
Morbius, was that his name?
Yeah, the guy who was on the planet, Dr. Morbius.
Dr. Morbius. That's probably why I thought he was evil. It's an evil name.
Ah, it sounds cool. Well, it sounds futuristic.
It sounds both futuristic and cool.
I don't know.
Evil.
I didn't think he was evil
You
when
didn't
the
think he
movie
was
started. Yeah, just to get that out there, I didn't think he was evil.
I thought it was pretty clear that he was obviously going to be like the villain.
No. I mean, he isn't really the villain.
I mean,
he is kind of, but he really isn't. Like, he himself is not.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
And that's one of my gripes later on, which we'll get to.
Okay. So they meet the daughter. They're all hitting on her. Oh, I think the second in command of the ship is especially funny in the way he does it. He tells her that the captain is evil, so she like won't hit on him or whatever. Then he's just like, "Hey, baby, kissing's good for your health. Just give me some sugar." Oh, you didn't like that? Well, you just got to do it a couple hundred times. You'll get used to it. And so he's just in make-out paradise. And the captain decides to be an asshole again. And he cock-blocks him like, "Nope, get out of here. You're not allowed to make up with fresh ladies while I'm around." And then later he makes out with her because he's a hypocrite.
Yeah, that captain is just the worst. But I was also I couldn't help but think, in that scene, man, she's gonna die. She's gonna die so quick. Because she grew up on this planet really far away from Earth. And, man, she must have gotten like 500 diseases in that one kiss that she has no immunity to.
Oh, I'm sure they're sanitized. That's not an issue.
Nah.
This takes place in the year 2300. It's
Man,
not...
no, I don't think so.
Are you kidding me? Whatever. You can accept faster than light spaceship travel, but diseases being cured...
I mean, okay, diseases can be cured, but that doesn't, take into account the fact that she wouldn't really have any sort of immunity.
Diseases being cured and being resistant to diseases that may even be around, even if you don't have natural immunities or whatever, that's significantly more plausible than traveling faster than the speed of light.
Not in this situation. She was isolated, remember? So she's not, in contact with all that. Now, granted, okay, so they have all this advanced technology on this planet, so... maybe you could say, oh, well, they have some advanced healing technique, but that's just what I thought of, which, minor problem.
They're prepared for the fact that people could have been born on that planet and isolate whatever. I'm not delving into this. I assume they would have been prepared for that. They were going as a away team or a relief team.
I thought they were just going to check, because the original thing, I thought they were just going to the planet to research it. They weren't like setting up a colony or something like that.
Yeah, I thought they were... Actually, now that you bring it up, I don't remember if they were supposed to be a relief team or if they were going to just check up on them because they hadn't heard from them in a while. Either one's possible. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, no well.
So they're talking to the scientist dude who they found on the planet who looks like he's going to be evil, to me at least. And he says, hey, even though everyone died, I want to stay here. Don't worry about me. Go home. Tell the people on Earth to not send back. I'll just be cool here for the rest of my life. And the dude's like, well, we have to communicate with the people on Earth, and we can't take off on our ship because you said last time people tried to take off on a ship, the monster or the force killed them all. So we're going to have to find a way to communicate with them from Earth. That's going to involve us making some type of machine or whatever. So the scientist dude gives them some material, or has his robot give them some material to help build the machine, and it's allegedly going to take them 10 days to get in communication with Earth to receive further orders. So after that is when all the people start making out with the girl. And then I think, is that when the first monster attack happens, or the first monster like sighting kind of?
Yeah, well, what happens is the monster it infiltrates the ship, and it doesn't actually show a lot of destruction when it infiltrates. You see like this invisible thing moving stuff around, but apparently its equipment is sabotaged, according to my little summary. They end up confronting Morbius in the morning about that. That's when he starts to go off and reveal all the stuff about the Krell, which beforehand they didn't know about.
They didn't even ask. So that was another thing. This guy said he's been here researching for 17 years, and he was able to build this robot that's apparently using incredibly advanced technology by himself. And at no point does the captain say, "Hey, how did you do that?" Or, "Hey, what have you been researching for 17 years? But why are you so interested in your research?" Nope, they don't care. Not even a little bit curious.
Well, the captain is an idiot, though.
He is.
So I don't really think that's a problem.
Let's go back just a little bit, because this was also an infuriating thing he did. So when the monster sneaks onto the ship, the monster is invisible, so the two guards that are on post can't see it. So the monster sneaks past the guards, and he gets into the ship. And when he sneaks into the ship, one of the soldiers who's asleep, he kind of hears a door open, so he kind of wakes up and looks, but he doesn't see anything, so he goes back to sleep. So cut to the next day, the captain is chewing out the two guards and the soldier who kind of woke up. And he's yelling to the soldier who kind of woke up because he was only somewhat helpful, because he only heard the door open and he didn't see anything. There were like 10 other soldiers around him who didn't even wake up. But the guy who was like, I kind of heard something, he gets chewed out and he gets 2 extra weeks on guard duty. It's complete and utter injustice. I hate the captain. He's the worst person.
Yeah, he's pretty bad.
So the evil guy at this point, he's explaining about this past alien civilization that existed on the world that they're on, and how technologically advanced they were, and how they left all of these artifacts, and he's showing them all of the artifacts and stuff, and this immense energy thing that they left behind. And he's explaining that that's what he researched. That's what he's been researching for the past 17 years, just their civilization and whatnot. So the captain, in the only smart move he's done, he's like, "You can't keep this to yourself. We can't just leave you here alone to research this. This would advance humanity into the future by thousands of years. Are you kidding me?" And the dude's like, "No, humanity's not ready. They're not going to get this information into I See Fit." And they're just kind of left at an impasse until the captain can actually communicate with other people. Also, the evil dude shows him this plot device, like a literal device that he used, and he uses it on himself and is able to double his IQ, and he did that like 10 years ago. And
It nearly killed him, though.
Yeah, it did nearly kill him.
And it killed the other guy who tried to use it.
Yeah, that's just something that they throw in because it becomes important later.
Well, allegedly, that's what makes it possible for him to even be able to research the ancient technology.
Oh yeah, he does mention that.
Because without him doubling his intellect like that, he wouldn't be able to comprehend any of it.
Yeah, or that's what he says, at least. Who knows?
I mean, well, sure, allegedly. Although I did find that whole bit about human race not being ready for it kind of whatever. Like you could show them how to build, at least more efficient energy systems.
Yeah, I agree.
And stronger materials. Why wouldn't they be ready for that?
I strongly agree with you, and that's what makes the end of this movie especially infuriating.
Yeah, that was, well, I mean, it's also scientifically inaccurate, but we'll get to both of those.
Yes.
I kind of feel, though, as a side note, that I shouldn't be criticizing like how scientifically inaccurate it is, because back then, I mean, I don't know how much they knew back then, but it feels like picking on a retard or something. Like what are you, retarded?
What? I don't think it was that really bad, actually.
Never mind.
I guess we'll talk about it when we get to it.
I mean, I just mean like it seems like maybe you should give them some kind of allowance, or rather, I should give them an allowance because it was back in the day. But then again, I feel like no.
If we're specifically talking about the ending of the movie, then I don't see the issue you're having, but I guess we'll get to it.
Well, okay, we'll get to it.
So he shows them this, and they're at this impasse, and so the captain goes home. Yeah, before this, there was a scene where the captain starts smacking on the dude's daughter, and she instantly falls in love with him for no reason.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
I didn't even understand that she started to like him.
Yeah, because before she was saying that she wanted to stay away from him.
Yeah.
She didn't want to see him.
And then there's a scene where they start to kiss, but I thought she was just doing that for the heck of it, because they'd already shown her just kissing a dude that she had no feelings for.
Yeah, just because she's like naive or something.
Yeah.
And not really because she has feelings for him. And then later on, she defies her father.
Yeah, she's saying, "I love him and I'm going to Earth with him," and yada yada. And it's like, I don't remember this relationship starting to happen. Was it because he started kissing you, but you'd already kissed everyone by your own admission.
Yeah, that made no sense. That was kind of annoying.
Also, during that same scene, there's a tiger who's on top of a ledge who jumps down and he's about to kill them both, but the captain pulls out a laser gun and kills the tiger, and that was a really cool effect. But what relevance did that have?
Actually, I read that it was a direct reference to some of the. I don't remember what it was, but maybe someone out there will pick it up. And basically, what it was there's this saying that only a virgin could tame a unicorn. And the idea being that a virgin, someone who hadn't been, I guess you could say, corrupted by, these ideas of like sexuality or whatever else, would be pure enough to sort of be in harmony with these animals of nature. And what I read seemed to say that that was sort of like a direct comparison. Like before she had met these, our little heroes, our travelers, that she was pure and she didn't really have any sort of, like when they came, she was introduced the whole idea of sexuality and everything else. And so it was at that point that she was from then on unable to sort of tame the wild creatures and everything else because she, from that point, was tainted.
Oh, really? I didn't get that at all. That's weird.
I mean, it was a reference to something, though.
No, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, but it's not something that you could just get. Well, maybe you could, but, I had to read about it. But yeah, that's what that was about. So actually, it did have some kind of meaning behind it.
Interesting. Okay. I thought that scene really bothered me. Good to know that it actually makes sense. I'm just going to loosely throw out, since I forgot to mention it up top, that this is supposed to be loosely based on The Tempest by William Shakespeare. Very, very loosely, but still loosely based.
Well, there's also a bit about the id from Sigmund Freud, which is one of my major gripes with this whole entire thing, even though I'm only loosely familiar with the id and the entire concept.
Oh.
Because it still doesn't make any sense, even with my loose familiarity, how they sort of construe this monster from this guy's subconscious. At least to me, it doesn't. But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay. So they go back to the ship after they just talked to the dude, and he doesn't want to give up his technology or whatever. And that night, the monster comes, and he kills one of the engineers who knew how to fix one of the broken parts. So now they can't communicate with the thing because the primary engineer is gone. And now they have a murder on their hands, so they storm into the evil dude's house, or the guy who looks evil, Mobius, whatever. They storm into his house, and they're like, yo, what's up? Why is this monster killing everyone except you? You've been here 17 years, we've been here a day, and look at the shit. And he's like, I warned you, dog. I told you not to land. Maybe you should ask freaking questions in the future. And so, again, I think they're just kind of at an impasse, and he leaves angry. And then that night, the monster attacks the ship again, except this time they're more ready for it, and they have like these laser fields. And
they had the force fields the first time.
Yeah, that's true.
Just no one noticed it.
Yeah, well, they noticed that it passed the force field, but they just...
Yeah, they saw... Well, afterwards, they saw footprints.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. One of the guys on the ship, after the fact, makes like a mold of the footprints, and they have like this sort of long scene about how, these footprints look nothing like I've ever seen before. And he comments about how it violates all known laws and principles of evolution, which I found to be a little silly, but that's just, we can just leave that on the side for now.
Yeah, it was dumb.
It's not really important.
No.
But it is kind of dumb.
So the monster attacks them for the third time, and they have their force field, except it's even stronger this time, and they all have their little laser guns, which look really ineffectual, and they have like their big torrent gun, and they're all firing at this thing repeatedly, even though it's invisible. When it hits the force field, the energy from the force field kind of outlines its body, and it's like this animated monster, cartoony looking thing, but it looks kind of cool. I don't know. I would have preferred if it stayed formless and not like a little animated monster, because that kind of ruined it for me. I mean, they wouldn't be able to see it otherwise. But...
Well, I mean, it could have, they could have still seen like, something's colliding with this force field.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
I mean, I don't know. It just seemed a little too cartoony.
Yeah.
But that's, again, a minor complaint.
1956.
Yeah.
So it's there getting shot at, but it's not really being hurt that much, so it's kind of annoying, and it kills a few people. And I don't even remember how they got rid of it, but it does leave at some point.
Well, according to my summary, it disappears when Dr. Morbius wakes up.
Oh yeah, that's right, because his daughter was screaming.
Yeah.
So Dr. Mobius wakes up, and then it's at that point that you're like, oh, this is his subconscious, or maybe at that point I was thinking maybe he only controls it when he's asleep.
Well, they didn't make
sure.
that connection yet, though.
I mean, I'm just saying, you as a viewer of the movie, at that point, you're like, oh, that's what's going on.
Oh, okay.
Like, up until that point in the movie, I was like, I don't even know what the story of this movie is. I have no idea where it's going. I have no idea what this monster is. I have no idea why this guy looks so evil. He's clearly supposed to be the villain somehow, but I have no idea how. And then that's when you, as the viewer, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. So they immediately go to his house, even though they don't know that it's his subconscious or whatever. They go to his house and they're like, yo, really, what's up? And then I don't remember exactly what happened. Oh, the guy who's now the new second in command, he goes to use the machine that made the Mobius. He uses that machine to make himself a genius, so that he can understand what's going on
It kills
himself.
him too, though.
Yeah, but it kills him like it did the guy way back when. But he lived just long enough to be able to explain a little bit of what's going on to the captain. And he tells the captain that the explanation is the id of whatever.
Here's the explanation. He explains that the Great Machine was built to materialize anything the Krell could imagine, projecting matter anywhere on the planet. But then he does mention the Krell forgot about the monsters from the id, which, anyways, let's get on with the plot before we get into that, because, man, that really bothers me. Okay, but anyways, so yeah, that's what happens. And so they suspect, okay, well, so Morbius is somehow using this machine, or maybe subconsciously, to project his inner id monster. Yeah.
So the captain tells Morbius that, to be clear, the captain wasn't even smart enough to know what an id was. Morbius had to explain that himself. But once the Morbius explains that, the captain puts two and two together, and he's like, this is your subconscious doing this. And Morbius is like, no, it's not. And now the monster has appeared right outside of Morbius's house and is trying to kill them all. And his daughter's there along with him and the captain, and they retreat down deep into the technology cellar that was built by the ancient people. But the monster can't be stopped. They have this unbreakable metal, but because the monster is being powered by a machine with infinite energy, it doesn't matter. He's able to melt the metal. And so Morbius is having like this internal struggle with himself. What do I do? Is this really me? These can't be my subconscious desires. I wouldn't have wanted all of my people dead, but apparently he did want them all dead, because if they were alive, they would have reported back to Earth, and then humanity would have gotten their hands on this technology, which Morbius thought they weren't ready for, which is also why his subconscious wanted the people on the ship to not be able to contact Earth.
Is that why? Because I thought that he just had a bias against humankind.
You thought he just wanted them all dead?
I mean, no, not that he wanted them all dead, but he, like in the movie, he remarks about how he didn't want to go back to Earth, and he basically thought that it was fine and comfortable being away from all of what's bad about mankind. Because even, when all that crap started to happen, did he even, he didn't really understand the depth of the Krell's knowledge or anything like that. So it's not like he was acting to defend it or anything like that.
Well, we don't know exactly when he started attacking with the id. All we know is that he uses the machine, he becomes twice as smart, and then at some point he starts researching, and then at some point shortly after that, the monster starts attacking people. Which happens first, we don't really know. So
okay, so I guess that can't really be explained. But I thought that he was just biased against humanity because he thought, that they're whatever, immoral, or he just didn't like their hubris, I guess.
I mean, that's entirely possible. They didn't really explain it. I was just giving him some noble motives, I guess. But if you want to look at it as his subconscious was just a dick, you can do that too. They're both
that's
possible.
One way of putting it.
So he's having this internal conflict, and eventually he's able to recognize that, yes, this is indeed my subconscious, and I am responsible for all of this on some level, at least. And so he runs to his subconscious monster, and he's like, no, please stop. And the monster kills himself, which doesn't make any sense. I guess you could argue at this point he's so disgusted in himself after learning that he's kind of responsible for a bunch of deaths that his subconscious does in fact hate him, so maybe that makes sense. I don't know.
According to this summary, it says that once he realizes that he is the monster, it triggers some sort of a mechanism in the giant machine that's causing his subconscious to materialize, and that backlash causes him to die. But the actual cause of the death isn't explicitly stated.
Oh, I just assumed that the monster was the one who killed him. That's interesting. Okay. They didn't make that clear.
Yeah, well, I mean,
So now that he's dead, the monster is gone. But right before he dies, he tells the main character, hey, push that button and pull that lever. Just trust me, nothing bad's going to happen. And then after the main character does it, he's like, planet's going to blow up. I win. And so they all hurriedly rush off the planet along with his daughter. And then the planet blows up.
Well, he wasn't being sinister.
No, I'm projecting the sinisterness on him, but he is being an idiot.
That still seemed really, really stupid to me. Like, why would you do that?
No reason.
Why would the Krell even build that in as a switch?
How would they not know that it was going to have this effect? Did they not test it on anyone? They're supposed to be incredibly intelligent.
That's another sort of inconsistency. How could these people who are, extremely intelligent, well, not people, aliens, whatever, how could they have not foreseen this?
Even if they didn't foresee it, once they noticed that it's happening, first off, I think they said they died not knowing what was going on, but even if that was the case, it killed all of them, 100% of them. I can see, hey, maybe a couple thousand people died, maybe even 10% of the population, but all of them? No, I'm not buying a movie. That's stupid.
Yeah. If they were supposed to have an intellect that was so superior to, to humans, and yet the humans could figure this out with relative ease.
In 2 days.
Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense.
Oh, and the human who figured it out, he was supposed to be, as intelligent as, one of their 3-year-olds or something, right?
Or basically like a child, like a small child.
Yeah, they specifically established that after using the machine, you have the intelligence of a stupid one of their 8-year-olds or something like that is what they say. And so apparently a stupid one of their 8-year-olds could have saved their entire race by the logic this movie establishes, and yet, nope, didn't.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense. Now, just a bit about, the end of the movie and the planet's destruction, because this did really bother me. Okay, so allegedly the power source for this giant machine is a fusion of 9,800 nuclear reactors, is I think what my source says. I don't know if that's actually legitimate.
I don't remember that ever being said in the movie. What they said was it was a machine of near infinite energy. It was 10 raised to the nearly infinite power is what the guy says.
That's what they say.
Which makes no sense, but
first of all, you can't raise something, or he actually used the phrase nearly infinite, which makes no sense.
Right.
But anyways, according to this, which, they also made a book which kind of fleshed things out, that's what it was supposed to be, which, if that's true, extrapolating from that, there's no way that an explosion of that many nuclear reactors could have destroyed the entire planet, let alone you would need to be that far away from the planet to escape its blast. So that was something that kind of bothered me. Now, I guess maybe that's not fair because I didn't actually say it in the movie, or maybe I'm just not remembering it correctly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't say that in the movie.
But still, whatever.
In the movie, all he said was near infinite energy, basically. So that wasn't a problem with me. Near infinite energy is certainly enough to blow up a planet.
Well, whatever that means.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything, but...
It doesn't mean anything, because they're, infinities within infinities. So near, you could say, oh, well, it really only has 1 kilowatt. I tricked you.
1 kilowatt is literally as close to infinity as 1 billion kilowatts, so I guess you have a point.
Okay, so there you go. Now, this whole bit about the id, well, my first question, I guess, would be, how is the Doctor, interfacing with this machine? That's something that I was confused about. How is... Yeah, he's obviously not doing it consciously. This monster is a part of his id, which is a concept that was invented by Sigmund Freud. I just don't know how to pronounce his last name.
That's how everyone pronounces it. I don't know if that's correct.
Yeah, it looks like it's supposed to be pronounced.
He became an American citizen. We can pronounce it however we want.
Freud?
No, not like that.
Anyways, okay, so it's a creation of Freud. He had these separate sort of ideas. Okay, so every person has a superego, an ego, and an id. And allegedly, the id is like the most carnal base level of, what makes up your personality and who you are and your, everything in your mind. And it's always there with you, and it's always in your subconscious. And it can't make moral judgments, first of all. So it can't, make any judgment about truth or bad or good or anything like that. So, first of all, therefore, it couldn't really know who his enemies are. And the id is really, it's kind of hard for me. Maybe I just don't know enough about the whole concept, but I did try to research it at least a little bit. Reasonably, you know what I mean? But it seems like the id is really sort of ingrained in the larger personality and, well, I wouldn't say personality, the larger sort of consciousness of the individual. And it wouldn't really follow to say that this sort of monster could come out of his subconscious, because the id it's kind of like a representation of instinct and the base level of motivation for pleasure and motivation for self-preservation and stuff like that. It's not really like a conscious thing that can make things and have concepts and have enemies. So that whole bit to me, just flowing from how is he even controlling this machine? He already states that he is thoroughly confused by all this. And then from that, how does this monster come from his id, which even if it did come from his id, why would it murder everyone? That makes no sense. Because even if that were somehow possible, it wouldn't follow from Freud's conception of what the id is. So that, to me, I don't like it.
Maybe it wasn't really the id, and maybe it was just the language that the doctor who died chose to use, because he could only say a word. I don't know.
Well, but that is listed as sort of a reference material.
Oh, really?
That concept.
Yeah,
which is why it bothers me.
And that was just poor planning on their part.
Or, at least they could have... I don't know. I kind of question how far it's really fair to, push it and say, okay, well, it was a movie, a science fiction movie, and they had to come up with some sort of reasonable plot, but at the same time, I don't know.
That particular aspect doesn't bother me.
Seems like they should have fleshed it out, or at least made it somewhat consistent with what Freud was saying. There should have been more explanation, is what I'm saying.
I guess. I've been doing my fair share of nitpicking here, but that one in particular didn't really bother me. But I don't know.
It's just not what the id is. That's like saying... Actually, I don't even have a valid comparison, because it's that hard. The id is so formless. It's like saying, some word from a sentence is the essence of that sentence, when it really depends on all the other words of the sentence to make sense. If that makes any sense. I don't even know if that makes sense. But it's kind of like that. The id is a part of the consciousness. You can't just isolate it and turn it into a monster.
Nah, you're nitpicking.
It bothers me.
But, yeah. So after the planet blows up and the captain's macking on the hot daughter a little bit more. I don't know how old the captain's supposed to be, but that girl's supposed to be 19. So I'm assuming if he's a captain, he's a lot older than that, at least.
Whatever. If I were a captain, there's a hot girl right there. What do you want? What do you want him to do?
Listen, I'm not judging the man. I would do
He's
that
walking
too.
around in these outfits,
hasn't seen a woman in over a year. Listen,
exactly. It's not just that. It's not just that he hasn't seen a woman, but man, she's not just she's above average attractiveness.
Skinny dipping clothing on.
Okay, yeah. So it's basically like maybe she's just acting all innocent.
That's how you get a real man.
Skinny dipping, that's not gonna tempt you at all. Maybe he really had good intentions, and then he just ended up making out with, not because he was a hypocrite, but because she just pushed him too far.
She didn't even push him. She didn't.
Okay, but
Actually, she kind of did. She goes, "Why don't you want to make out with me?" I think she says, "Why don't you want to kiss me like everyone else does?"
That was pretty funny. That reminded me of that thing from Dragon Ball Abridged. When Krillin had his girlfriend, and he was like, why aren't you in bed with your girlfriend like everyone else? Or something like that.
That's funny.
Okay, yeah, but that reference isn't going to make any sense to any of the listeners, I guess.
It doesn't matter.
But anyway, man, why don't you kiss me like everyone else?
And they start talking about... in innuendo. I study all kinds of things. I study psychology and physics and biology. That's been more on the theory side, hasn't it? Well, I wouldn't mind making it practical. Oh, shut the
Is
freak
that
up.
really what that was about? I didn't even notice
Well,
that.
that was incredibly blatant. I am positive I interpreting that correctly. Yeah.
Okay, so basically she's not innocent at all, really.
Yeah, at that point, as soon as she gets out of the pool, for some reason, even though the last scene that we saw her in, she was saying, I hate this guy, but I'm going to make a cool dress for him. And then she's like, I want to have sex with you. And it's like, huh, that was really sudden. Okay.
Man.
But even at that point, I thought she was just saying, I want to have sex with everyone. I still didn't realize that she had, like, fallen in love with him specifically. That did come out of nowhere.
That seemed to be the obvious sort of resolution for me. So I was like, okay, alright, fine. Romantic love interest, fine, I'll give it to you.
Well, this is the Mandatory Women Are Sexual Objects podcast. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything. That's the entire story, and I don't really have anything else to add. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, but you need to go to class.
Do I? Oh, shit. Okay, well, signing off. Thanks.
See you later.